소리내어 따라 해보세요. 영어 공부는 반복이 중요합니다.
What were you doing? What were you doing? What were they thinking? What were they thinking? What were your plans? What were your plans? What were the results? What were the results? What were her reasons? What were her reasons? What were the main topics? What were the main topics? What were the challenges? What were the challenges? What were the best moments? What were the best moments? What were the highlights? What were the highlights? What were the key points? What were the key points? What were the changes? What were the changes? What were the outcomes? What were the outcomes? What were the reactions? What were the reactions? What were the expectations? What were the expectations? What were the lessons learned? What were the lessons learned? What was the weather like yesterday? What was the weather like yesterday? What was your favorite part of the book? What was your favorite part of the book? What was the reason for your decision? What was the reason for your decision? What was the last movie you watched? What was the last movie you watched? What was the best moment of your party? What was the best moment of your party? What were the difficulties? What were the difficulties? What were the suggestions? What were the suggestions? What were the benefits? What were the benefits? What were the risks? What were the risks? What were the discoveries? What were the discoveries? What were the opinions? What were the opinions? What were the events? What were the events? What were the trends? What were the trends? What were the feelings? What were the feelings? What were the memories? What were the memories? What were the goals? What were the goals? What were the experiences? What were the experiences? What were the mistakes? What were the mistakes? What were the solutions? What were the solutions? What were the stories? What were the stories? What do you like? What do you like? What do we need? What do we need? What do they want? What do they want? What does she do? What does she do? What does he say? What does he say? What does it mean? What does it mean? What do you think? What do you think? What do we have? What do we have? What do they know? What do they know? What does she like? What does she like? What does he want? What does he want? What does it look like? What does it look like? What do you do? What do you do? What do they say? What do they say? What does she need? What does she need? What does he think? What does he think? What does it show? What does it show? What do you want? What do you want? What do we learn? What do we learn? What did you do? What did you do? What did we see? What did we see? What did they say? What did they say? What did she find? What did she find? What did he tell you? What did he tell you? What did it look like? What did it look like? What did you think? What did you think? What did we learn? What did we learn? What did they want? What did they want? What did she do? What did she do? What did he make? What did he make? What did it mean? What did it mean? What did you find? What did you find? What did we decide? What did we decide? What did they enjoy? What did they enjoy? What did she say? What did she say? What did he show you? What did he show you? What did it do? What did it do? What did you want? What did you want? What did we discuss? What did we discuss? What do you remember? What do you remember? What do we celebrate? What do we celebrate? What do they believe? What do they believe? What does she enjoy? What does she enjoy? What does he prefer? What does he prefer? What does it require? What does it require? What did you enjoy? What did you enjoy? What did we achieve? What did we achieve? What did they discover? What did they discover? What did she create? What did she create? What did he explain? What did he explain? What did it represent? What did it represent? What do you expect? What do you expect? What do we hope for? What do we hope for? What do they plan? What do they plan? What does she suggest? What does she suggest? What does he recommend? What does he recommend? What does it involve? What does it involve? What did you learn? What did you learn? What did we experience? What did we experience?
너는 무엇을 즐겼니?
What did you enjoy?
우리는 무엇을 결정했니?
What did we decide?
너는 무엇을 원하니?
What do you want?
그것은 무엇을 의미하니?
What does it mean?
해결책은 무엇이었니?
What were the solutions?
위험은 무엇이었니?
What were the risks?
당신이 마지막으로 본 영화는 무엇이었나요?
What was the last movie you watched?
어제 날씨는 어땠나요?
What was the weather like yesterday?
감사의 하루 되세요. 너무너무 고생하셨습니다.